The moment that door opened, everything collapsed and Prince Harry knew it. What was supposed to be a private, emotionally charged reconciliation between father and son instantly turned into something far colder, far more calculated, and far more dangerous. Because this was never just a family meeting. This was a controlled operation. And King Charles had already decided how it would end before Prince Harry even sat down. Prince Harry walked into Highgrove believing he still had leverage. He believed this would be the moment, the breakthrough, the emotional crack in the monarchy's armor. A quiet room, a vulnerable father battling illness, a chance to rebuild something real. But instead of warmth, instead of a hug, instead of even a flicker of softness, he was met with distance. Physical distance, emotional distance, strategic distance. And then came the shock. The door opened and Queen Camila stepped in. Not an assistant, not a servant, not a neutral presence. Queen Camila. That single entrance changed the entire power dynamic in seconds, because now this wasn't a conversation. It was a witnessed encounter, a monitored exchange, a controlled environment where every word would be observed, remembered, and most importantly, never twisted later. And in that moment, Prince Harry's entire strategy began to unravel. The plan to appeal privately, emotionally, personally was dead. For 45 minutes, King Charles didn't move closer. He didn't soften. He didn't lean in. He stayed exactly where he was rooted behind that table, like a man who had drawn a line no one was allowed to cross. No embrace, no warmth, no reconciliation, just silence stretching between them like an invisible wall. And then came the real signal, the blue leather dispatch folder. Placed deliberately between them, not casually, not absent-mindedly, but with purpose. That wasn't paperwork, that wasn't family material, that was authority, that was power. That was the crown sitting right there on the table, reminding Prince Harry that this was no longer a father he was speaking to. This was a sovereign, and the message was chillingly clear without a single raised voice. Nothing you ask for today will change anything. But why did it reach this point? Why did King Charles choose such a cold, controlled approach instead of even attempting emotional repair? Because behind the scenes, this meeting wasn't spontaneous, it was engineered. For weeks, palace insiders had been on high alert. Every scenario analyzed, every risk calculated. Because this wasn't just about a family reunion, it was about control of narrative, control of image, and most importantly, control of power. Prince William and Catherine had already drawn their line in absolute terms. No concessions, no emotional manipulation, no weakening of the monarchy's position. Prince William had reportedly warned that this meeting could become a disaster if handled emotionally, that any sign of softness would be weaponized, exploited, packaged, and sold. And King Charles listened. But instead of refusing the meeting, he did something far more strategic. He allowed it, and then stripped it of everything Prince Harry needed. Highgrove wasn't chosen for comfort, it was chosen for control. No official setting, no palace protocols, no cameras, no records, no institutional weight that could later be used as validation. It looked like a family tea, but it functioned like a containment chamber. And Prince Harry walked straight into it, because while he thought he was arriving for reconciliation, the palace had already redefined the meeting entirely. This wasn't about fixing relationships, this was about limiting damage, and everything that followed proved it. Prince Harry had one goal: prove proximity, prove relevance, prove that despite everything, he still had access to the core of royal power, because without that proof, everything else, media deals, branding, influence begins to collapse, and he needed something tangible, a moment, a promise, or even better, a photograph. That was the real prize. A simple image, King Charles with Archie and Lilibet, would have rewritten everything. It would have validated their standing overnight, would have restored value where it had been fading. It would have sent a signal to the world that despite everything, the connection still existed. But the palace already knew that, which is why the environment was designed to make sure that moment could never happen. Every move King Charles made reinforced distance. When Prince Harry stepped forward, hoping for a natural embrace, King Charles didn't meet him halfway. He stopped it before it began with a formal handshake. Not rejection, not aggression. Something far worse. Politeness is unbreakable. You can't argue with it. You can't accuse it, but you can feel exactly what it means. And what it meant here was final. The conversation never went where Prince Harry needed it to go. Every attempt to bring up security, finances, pressure redirected, deflected, neutralized. King Charles didn't shut him down loudly. He did it quietly, calmly, completely. Even the smallest details felt deliberate. The seating arrangement, the positioning of the table, the presence of Queen Camila watching every word, the way King Charles kept steering everything back to safe, meaningless topics. Weather, children, surface-level politeness, nothing deeper, nothing usable, nothing that could be turned into leverage later, because that's what this meeting really was, a controlled denial of access. And slowly, painfully, Prince Harry began to realize it. This wasn't reconciliation, this was containment. And by the time that realization fully set in, it was already too late. The silence inside that room didn't just linger, it tightened, it pressed. It exposed everything Prince Harry had walked in trying to hide, because as the minutes dragged forward, it became painfully obvious that this wasn't simply a cold family exchange, it was a complete strategic shutdown unfolding in real time, and Prince Harry was trapped inside it with no way to shift the direction. Every attempt to steer the conversation toward anything meaningful, anything actionable, anything that could later be used as proof of connection was quietly intercepted by King Charles, whose calm redirections felt less like politeness and more like precision strikes designed to leave nothing behind that could be extracted, edited, or sold later. Prince Harry had arrived carrying pressure that went far beyond emotional reconciliation, and that pressure began to surface in subtle but unmistakable ways as the meeting progressed. The financial strain, the mounting legal losses, the collapsing expectations tied to future media deals, all of it hovered beneath the surface of every carefully chosen sentence. Prince Harry needed relief, needed reassurance, needed something that could stabilize everything spiraling outside those walls. But King Charles never gave him an opening to even properly frame that need. Instead, every time Prince Harry edged closer to those subjects, King Charles shifted the atmosphere back into something deliberately shallow, forcing the conversation into safe territory that offered no resolution, no promise, no leverage. And then came the moment that revealed just how firmly the door had been closed. When Prince Harry attempted to introduce the weight of his security concerns and financial pressures into the discussion, King Charles didn't argue, didn't debate, didn't even visibly react in frustration. He simply placed his hand on the blue leather dispatch folder again, a small, almost understated movement, but one that carried the full force of institutional authority behind it. That gesture wasn't just symbolic, it was final. It signaled that everything Prince Harry was about to ask for had already been preemptively denied before it could even be spoken out loud. The message was unmistakable. These matters were not up for discussion, not in this room, not under these conditions, not ever in the way Prince Harry needed them to be. That single motion changed the energy completely, because it confirmed what had only been suspected until that point. This wasn't a conversation between family members negotiating a fragile peace. This was a sovereign enforcing boundaries that could not be crossed, no matter how personal the appeal, no matter how urgent the situation. Prince Harry wasn't being heard, he was being managed, carefully, deliberately, and with no room for misinterpretation. And as that realization deepened, the final opportunity Prince Harry had been quietly working toward began slipping away the possibility of capturing a moment that could reset everything. The idea of securing even a single image, a controlled but meaningful photograph that could later serve as undeniable proof of connection, had been central to the entire visit. It was never openly demanded, never bluntly requested in a way that could be rejected outright, but it hovered in the background of every interaction. Prince Harry understood the power of that image, and so did King Charles, which is exactly why it never happened. When the suggestion was gently introduced, framed as something innocent, something private, something that could remain within the family, King Charles declined with the same quiet firmness that had defined the entire meeting. No confrontation, no visible resistance, just a smooth, immediate redirection that left no space to revisit the idea. And with that, the most valuable outcome Prince Harry could have taken from Highgrove vanished completely. The presence of Queen Camila throughout this moment ensured that nothing could shift, nothing could soften, nothing could be negotiated behind a veil of emotion. Queen Camila didn't need to speak often, didn't need to intervene directly, because the mere fact that Queen Camila was there transformed every exchange into something recorded, something witnessed, something that could never be reframed later. Every glance, every pause, every carefully chosen word existed under that silent supervision, and it reinforced the reality that this meeting had been locked down from the very beginning. By the time the conversation reached its final stretch, the outcome was already sealed. Prince Harry had come seeking reassurance, validation, and a pathway back into relevance, but instead found himself facing a structure that had already adapted to function without him. King Charles had allowed the meeting to happen, had fulfilled the basic obligation of seeing family, but had done so in a way that stripped the encounter of any strategic value. No promises had been made, no positions had shifted, no access had been granted, and perhaps most devastating of all, nothing had been created that could be taken away and used later. As the meeting ended and the departure began, the absence of anything tangible became the most powerful statement of all. No images, no announcements, no visible sign that anything meaningful had taken place behind those closed doors. In a world driven by perception, that absence spoke louder than any confirmation ever could. It told a story of distance, of control, of a monarchy that had quietly redefined the terms of engagement without ever needing to declare it publicly. Prince Harry had walked into Highgrove believing that proximity still held power, that access could still be leveraged, that the past could still be reactivated for the future. But as the gates faded behind him and the silence of that meeting lingered, the reality settled in with undeniable clarity.